firstly, thank you for joining us either live here or on demand later sometime in the future, and wherever you are in the world. We were just talking that Nicky here's in Liverpool in the UK, and there's folks down in Melbourne, and there's people in Sydney and people in Auckland. So what an international crew we have just to the panelists. I'll get to the panelists in a moment. My name is Graham, and I'll be your host for today's session on the topic of Marketo and Workfront, also known as why did Adobe buy Workfront for $1.5 billion? And what does that mean to BPX's customers, users of marketing automation tools such as Marketo and others? Here's the agenda. It's a short 30 minutes, but hopefully packed with goodness, including discussions about dogs with sausages hanging out of their mouths. So really focusing in on the 5 functional areas that Workfront offers. It actually has more than that, but that's really all we can cope with today, I think, in the first session today. But the first point here is, why are we here? And just why is Workfront so important for our Marketo customers? Well, before we answer that, let's take a quick look at why Adobe actually spent a bunch of money late in 2021 to buy Workfront in the first place. This is my favorite quote. There's been plenty of them from all the folks who did due diligence and the financial analysts and the industry analysts when they put their keyboards away. This is kind of why. It's to help marketing people. And so, because marketing people are just so darn busy, so I wouldn't say they're burnt out, but a lot of our customers, you can see it in their eyes. And they have, on average, 7 different jobs to do, not including the project management of all the campaigns and the projects that they're seemingly increasingly taking on, plus reporting back to their bosses, keeping the compliance folks happy, being a good corporate citizen and a good marketing citizen. Now, this very campaign, of which you probably realized, considering you've joined, and there was a registration page, and there was a thank you page, and there was emails going out and notifications and social stuff and registrations and reports and the presentation that we've got here. There's 16 different assets that we needed to manage. And there's 6 people on this call, including EE, who have been involved in all of that. So we've got 6 different opinions, and we needed to get collaboration to get all of those people together just to get the right messaging out. So it's really hard to do one campaign well. By the way, well done, EE. Thank you for getting it done. But when you've got 5 to do in a week, 10 to do in a week, it's really tough. And if you've got a marketing team of more than 2 people, and that's where we get to, plus all your web design, events, and copy agencies, plus managers, chances are some of them will be your customer, plus the brand assurance people, plus the legal and the compliance folks. It's amazing that people get anything done at all, to be honest, plus all the other folks that go into opinions and those drive-by conversations that Nicky was talking about a little earlier on, if you heard. It's going to be incredibly tough, and you need systems and procedures and a solution that's going to assist you, and that's Workfront. So if I look at the challenges that the average marketing person, not that there's any average marketing people on the call, but you know what I mean, the challenges that they're facing. Do we really optimize things? Now, I'm being a little harsh to some of our customers, but I know lots of the folks who are on this call. Do we, as busy marketing people, ever really go back and manually review the results of the last campaign in order to make things better for the next time? Sometimes we execute campaigns without really knowing exactly how they stack up into the strategy of things. Don't get me started on the words briefing, because that's huge in marketing automation terms. The briefing is the foundation of it all. And if you don't get that right and have it collaborated with, and I'll come to that one next, the collaboration button there. If you don't get that right and collaborated with all of the different agencies and the people who have opinions on things, you're going to start off with a dodgy foundation. And then when it comes into content and creation, and the Marketo customers on the call will definitely know that for sure, the content and the creation, the review and approvals process. And if you're still emailing people with the proof of the invite going out, then you need a bit more assistance than I think you'll probably lay on. And then in execution land, a clear view on how a campaign is progressing throughout the campaign, but also throughout all of its cousins and parent campaigns, etc., and comparing them to where they should be. Now, in another time, we'll probably go through this slide in more detail because it's actually one of my favorite ones. And it came out at the time that Adobe acquired the Workfront organizations. And it was something called the Unified Marketing System of Record for Adobe. Now, if I look, I don't want to spend all of our time saying what Marketo isn't, but it's not a planning tool. It isn't a workflow tool. There's no workflow componentry inside of it at all. It's got something to offer as far as budgeting is concerned, but not to the level that we're going to see in a moment. It's not a collaboration tool either. Yes, multiple people can log in. Yes, you can sort of have an approvals process, but no, it's not there. It isn't a project management tool, and it's not a proofing tool, and it's not any of those things. It's not pretending to be any of those things, but that's why Marketo, Adobe acquired the Workfront organization. So we've got a few folks on the call. And Nicky, do you want to wave and say hi?
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you.
It's fabulous to have you here. I'm going to ask you a few questions in a minute and let you carry on talking, and I'll go a little bit more quiet. But Nicky's the director of the work management practice at BluprintX. So Nicky started WMA, Work Management Australia, and the team, some of whom are on the call here today, are transitioning into the BluprintX family. But I love to think of them as the equivalent of the old traditional BluprintX organization that you know. So what BluprintX is to Marketo, in other words, Partner of the Year, 3 years in a row, the folks at WMA are to Workfront. Right, so award-winning, the number one partner here in Australia and throughout the rest of the world as well. So really great to have all of you guys here. So Barry, Steve, Andrea, I'm not sure if Nitin's around. Do you want to wave and say hi and do daft things? Awesome. Okay, so let's get into the real fun parts. And just for fun, I put down all of the locations that this crew is in, and it's all the bottom right-hand corner. So apart from Nicky, who happens to be visiting Liverpool at the moment. And don't get me started on the soccer, because I'm not a Liverpool fan, but I know they are. So you've got World of Hurt. How's Aston Villa going for you, Nicky?
No, you see, we're not going to talk football. Great.
Okay. All right. Fine. So I've got some questions to ask. So how can Workfront help in this space? So we talked a little bit earlier on about, or in about 2 minutes ago in my bit, that Marketo isn't a planning and doesn't really have a capability for hosting briefings. So where can Workfront help us there?
Yeah. Thanks, Graham. So what we typically find is with our marketing teams is that they really struggle to capture all of those requests. And you mentioned drive-bys before, and typically people might come up to you and ask for questions like, can you do this? Can you do that? There might be an email, it might be a phone call, it might be in a meeting, or it might be a document. Now, the way Workfront can help is that it can start to capture those incoming briefs and requests electronically. So it'll start to capture in a form like you're seeing here, whereby you can start to enter the information that's needed for you to start to build up your brief and the content of that brief. Now, the nice thing about this is that the person who's sending you this, and this can all be through your intranet online and nice and electronic, the person who's submitting this, if you set it up in a particular way, they can't submit it unless they give you all the information that you need in order to start working on your brief. So if, for example, you're getting requests for a campaign and they don't give you the due date, then you can stop them from submitting the brief until they tell you the due date. So you're not getting a lot of that noise through the system, and you're getting all of the information you need before you even start the work. Once you've got that work, all of this information, by the way, then flows throughout the rest of the system and the project. And then once you've got that work, that information in the request, you can then put that through to a queue, which is prioritized, so that you can start to prioritize and plan your work, and then go into a project which is templated. So if you go to the next slide, all of that information can be translated into a project plan here, and so you can start to really plan out your work and see where if it's going to be able to be done on time, or if you're going to be running late?
I think some of the smaller clients that BPX has, those who have really just started to pick up marketing automation in general. The slide before here, that tends to be either in Word or Excel.
Yeah.
And the number of times that we've been asked for a planning or a briefing document, and our customers are expecting a Word document, probably bears that out. Even the larger ones. So it's for me, it's tremendous, because what it means is that the marketing team don't actually get to start anything before the briefing is actually complete.
Exactly. And this, just for the audience, this is just an example of a brief form. So we can build it, we tailor it to your specific examples and your specific needs. So if, for example, you say, well, we've got a drop down list of the type of asset that you need to create, then we can build that in for you. So this is just a nice example of one of the types of briefs that we can build, but we can make them as complex as you like, or simple. It could be a simple request as, I need a multi-channel campaign, or I need a change to an EDM. You guys have done a Christmas campaign for an email. I just need a change to that email. So it can be a simple list of requests to the marketing team that you'll start to receive and be able to put a queue in.
So just quickly on that, Nikki, just to be clear, you can have multiple briefs in there. So you can have a very simple brief for an update to an EDM, which doesn't need to go to management and can go straight to the design team or the copy team to action. And you can have a more complicated brief for a campaign that has layers of approval on it and needs to go through a more rigorous process for it. We can match multiple workflows to match the work needs, match the way you want to work.
Yeah, thanks.
And how easy is it to find the same campaign that you did last year? Because I can tell you it's not that easy if you're doing it in Word, unless you've got a really good naming convention and an intranet somewhere.
Not only is it really easy to find, it's really easy to select it, copy it, and then just make a few edits and resubmit a new one.
Exactly.
The next part, or the next bullet point, I suppose, is to talk about collaboration. And this one's pretty darn close to my heart, because I just mentioned there on the intro that this very small campaign really had 16 different assets, but it included our designers and folks over in the UK, of which we've got somebody who's a copywriter, we've got someone who's in charge of design and the imagery and the artwork, somebody who created something else for social. So how we get collaboration inside of all of those. So again, Marketo isn't there to manage a team of that ilk. So help me a little bit, Nikki, as to how Workfront can help.
Sure. And well, the beautiful thing about Workfront is that a lot of it's not just the project planner or marketing ops person who's running the campaign who looks at Workfront. It's also the rest of the team, and it really helps when you've got not only siloed teams, but teams in different locations. And especially through the pandemic, this has been a fantastic tool for companies who can see all of their work in one place. So what Workfront does is it's called an operational system of record, where the operations and the work is in one place and everybody can see it. So this example here is a to-do list for a designer, for example, to say, these are the proofs that I need to manage today, or I need to go and approve, or I need to have a look at and do some work on. If you go to the next screen, I think we're showing a report. So the executives can also see what's going on, to see how many hours have been spent on a project, or how a campaign is running. So in terms of collaboration, it's really bringing everybody into the one tool so that they have visibility into real-time, real data of what's happening there on the campaign, so that you don't have to have consistent meetings and sending reports to everybody to say, hey, listen, have you done your work? Because you can go right into Workfront and see live to see whether or not people have done work, or where a campaign is up to. Yeah, here we go. So this is a really nice visual of how campaigns are running. So rather than having to update the executives or your managers or any the CMO, you can have a look in here and see exactly how the campaigns are running. And these flags here are a bit like the RAG status. Green's going great, yellow is okay, and red is a bit of an alarm bell. And you can then drill into those and see what's going on. So it really brings all that information into one place. With report approvals as well. All those approvals can be in there to see who has approved something and who hasn't, to keep track of if something's running late. So, oh, and also, yeah, that's a really nice one to show the proofs. So if you're wondering, where is my proofing? What's been going on with the review and approval? It's running late. We can hop into this screen and see, look, there's a couple of proofs which haven't been approved. Maybe somebody's gone on leave. How do we get that moving along? And this is a really nice way to see what's on track and what's not on track.
I will say here that when we are designing, and some of the folks I can see on the call here now have used our services when we've been building Marketo templates, landing page or email templates. And we've used something called Bug Herd. We've used a tracking tool in order to do some proofing in there, but it's not that great for giving approvals. And so if you are in a marketing world and you're trying to build all of these assets into Marketo and all these other tools, then having something like this is sort of next level. And I suspect you're going to need it if you're trying to do the sort of campaigns, because all of the sort of campaigns that people are doing now have got so many different facets, so many different assets, that it's almost impossible to keep up manually.
Yeah, and you can't do it manually. You need to be able to have a system whereby you can not just yourself seeing it, but it's also the people who are contributing to it, and and the people that you need to report up to. So the reporting in Workfront is fantastic. Anything that's in the solution, we can pretty much report on. So, and we can change it for the person who's looking at it. So for a designer who wants to just see what they're doing today, to the executive who needs to see how the campaigns are running from a high level, it's very, very flexible.
Okay, it's not a question, but we do have a comment, and it's not to everyone. So I'll just say it came from Anna. I won't say the second name, just in case you didn't want it to go everywhere. And I know we get on to proofing in a few moments' time. You're just talking about the reporting, I think, here on the proofing. But Anna's saying that proofing has been an absolute game changer for us. So that might be a good sign, whoever it was that helped Anna with that.
Well, we know, and they I think we're going to talk about proofing in a minute, but that's a fantastic segue into that as well.
Cool. How can Workfront help? The next part, which is project prioritization with full visibility at every stage. Again, this is not something that Marketo actually does. You can't go in and see, apart from the fact that it's working and it's going, and it might be a nurture that's going like for a long time. You can't really see where it is in the stages. So help me with what I'm looking at here.
And we really like this screen, this dashboard, and a lot of our customers use these dashboards to really keep track of the prioritization of your campaign. So this will show your campaigns by channel, for example. We can switch around to be by region or by other variables, but it'll show you a stage gate or a milestone tracker of where your campaigns are up to in the whole life cycle of a campaign, and whether or not they've been on track or not. So in the top one, you can see the green means everything's on track. That's unusual for a nice camp, customers, I would expect. But the red dots are showing that there might be an issue or a risk that it could cause it to run late. So you can have a really quick view into how things are running and how do I prioritize them. Another way that we talk about prioritization is really important is to make sure that when you get some work in, how do you know that you can actually do that work? How can you prioritize it with your resourcing? So if you've got all this work coming in and you've only got 3 designers and they're absolutely smashed and you're trying to push more stuff onto them, you can either kill them and give them more work or make them work overtime, or you can try to look at your work and prioritize it, shift it left or right depending on your workload. Or do we need to actually go out and get some freelancers? So the reporting and the resource management is a really powerful tool within Workfront to be able to show you what needs to be prioritized, or maybe what needs to go down to the bottom of the priority list.
Yeah, the whole capacity planning thing is absolutely vital. I don't know how people can cope.
If you look at the next slide of how you can see how busy your team is, and so you can have a quick view of the people, where it's red, they've been over allocated, and there's some availability for the rest of the team. So that's a really nice way to be able to prioritize not only your work, but say, okay, well, we've got capacity here to do more if your team are underloaded or not.
There's a lot of underloads there.
Oh yeah, that team's
yeah, there's a lot in that. And when we talk about the availability, we have the ability to set up multiple schedules with public holidays in it. We have the ability for individual people to put in time off. You can see Minnie Moore has some time off in the end of Jan, start of Feb. so that you can have people that only work 4 days per week. You can have people that have public holidays in this part of the world or that part of the world. And all of that is factoring into those hours that are available per person per day. Also runs, can't see it in this view, but you can grain it down to skill sets to say, not only is this a designer, this is a designer with this particular product in case we need that particular product or skill set for the campaign.
Yeah, and it's also a good view of to see who's working on what, so we can drill into those dashboards and see, maybe one of the teams over allocated on something. So what projects are they working on that's causing them to take so much time out on a particular day? A question I've just popped up there. Atlassian's Jira, it's not quite as powerful as the resource management here for the capacity and utilization. We do integrate to Jira. It's one of the out-of-the-box integrations as well. But this is a lot more powerful in terms of the resource management compared to Jira.
Yes, and it can integrate with Jira, so that you can use the briefing tool to create a brief. From that, you can spin up a template. Some of the activities from that template can then be pushed through to Jira, be completed in Jira, and fed back to Workfront to say that that's been done if that's what you want, whilst still having a whole view of all of that work.
Fourth point, and we're doing quite well on time, but proofing is always a fun one. So help, because we just don't have that at all. No Marketo capability in there.
Yeah, the proofing, this has got to be one of the best pieces of Workfront, and as one of the Anna mentioned before, it's made a big game changer in some of our customers, well, nearly all of our customers who use it. And my favorite quote was when we were doing some pre-sales years ago to a client, and they had a mini trial of proofing, and they went from 3-day approval down to 3-hour approval. And not only that, they were able to see how many revisions they had, how many versions of the tool. They were able to audit their work here. And what proofing is, I'm not sure how many people are aware of proofing, but we can set up a proofing approval flow for the work. And then when a different version comes in, we can send that through the same proofing approval process and then start to compare the images side by side when the changes are made. So what it does is it automates that process by allowing you to set up the stages that a proof needs to go through and the people who need to approve it. And you can do cool things like send them notifications if they're late and give them a couple, half an hour to do it. Not that we haven't seen that short, but maybe half a day to do it. And if they haven't done it, send them a notification to say, where is it? It's running late. We need you to do this. It really helps where you don't have to keep reinventing that wheel, and you don't have to think about, if I've got this approval and it needs to go to somebody, I don't know who it needs to go to. That's all already set up for you. So if it needs to go to brand and legal and finance and the CMO, the CEO at the last stage, you don't need to know that. You don't need to think about that as a designer. You can just put that through into the approval workflow automatically. And then the comments that you can do with this. So when it goes through the reviews, all of this is digitally approved and commented on. So you can point to areas and make changes, and then overlay the images like you're seeing here on the screen to show not only what changes have been made that you've asked for, but sometimes designers take it on their own bat to make changes that haven't been asked for. And they could cause some issues where they might have removed something really important. So it is a really great way to verify that what you've asked for has been done, and then it can go to the next stage. So it really takes away that thought, the problems of it going to the wrong people. It is auditable and traceable, and it's fantastic for compliance because it can't go through to the next stage unless one stage has been completed.
Yeah, the compliance issue seems to rear its head a lot more regularly now than it ever has. I'm assuming that's only going to.
And this is all reportable as well. So our customers can take these, the thumbnails and the reports of all of the changes, and it can all be auditable. So especially for the finance industry, we're finding that they love that.
Cool. Thank you for that. And then the final point, and that's the integration into apps, tools, and other file sharing solutions.
There's a number of out-of-the-box integrations. There's available. There's a number of plugins, and there's a integration tool called Fusion as part of the Workfront suite. It's all about that transfer of information. So, for example, out of the box, you can say when an opportunity reaches a certain threshold within Salesforce, you can spin up a project, based on a template and run that work through. Yep. So there are a number of areas. It does also allow you to link to multiple repositories. So you can, in submitting a brief, you can refer to prior artwork and say, we want something like this, but changed a bit. And it does allow you to also push the final artwork once it's been approved into your DAM or DAM-like repository to be searchable, and can map the metadata across to allow anything relevant from the campaign that created the artwork to be a searchable item in the future to make sure it's reused. We've got a number of clients who part of the journey is just to increase the amount of reuse and decrease the amount of original content they create in their campaigns, because they are aware they do have the assets. They're just not good at sharing them and at people in the organization knowing what's available. Looking at the various connections there and the way it does it. There's particular plugins for Creative Cloud, which means that your designers actually don't ever need to go into Workfront. They can do the work in Design or Publisher. They can once they've finished the work, they can simply bring up the Workfront panel and say, this is the task that was doing for, this is the approval path that needs to go through. Oh, and I'd also like Joe to have a look at it as well. And they actually don't need to leave the creative tools they use to do the work where they're best at.
Which leads us, I think, onto Raj's comment, and I'll take a stab while you gather your thoughts a bit, Barry. But the question was, how does this work with Marketo as a user license? So there's nothing to embed inside of Marketo. There's no Workfront button that appears inside of Marketo itself. So in essence, it's its own separate tool. However, at the back end, we've done some integration to facilitate things being passed between the two tools. And so your question about things like SSO, so single sign-on and other things, you're going to have to help me there, Barry. Help me with how it works.
Yep. So single sign-on, absolutely. Out of the box, you can, when you set up, once you set up single sign-on to a identity provider, you can say per user whether they use single sign-on or local credentials or both. You can force them to only use single sign-on. You can say these users use single sign-ons, these can't. There's a follow-up question about external. Absolutely. There's no, all you need is an email address to set up an account in Workfront. Doesn't matter whether it's within your organization or not. Single sign-on can auto-provision users. The level of a user that can submit briefs and make comments and decisions in proof approvals can be done with a free license. So you can set up auto provisioning. You can publish it on the internet, and when people go to the internet and say, I want to submit a brief, it'll create a free license for them in Workfront in the background from your SSO details and allow them to work seamlessly. Third parties, absolutely, you can give them free licenses. You may want to consider giving them a paid license, which has more power around it, and possibly one per agency rather than one per named individual in the agency. But they can absolutely be set up as well. Office 365 or G Suite, I mean, you can access the document repositories to refer to them, but there are also plugins that allow on the Workfront dashboard, which we haven't even looked at here, which shows what you've been asked to do and when you need to do it. We can also populate that same list with your Office 365 or G Suite calendar, so that you can not only see that I've got this on Monday, you can actually block out time in your calendar to do the task that's delivered there. There's a lot of options. I mean, every single thing that it integrates to, there's a lot to talk about what those options are and what that flexibility and power is.
Which brings us neatly to the end. Thank you for all those questions, folks. That's real cool. In signing off, first of all, I wanted to say thank you to all the folks who are on the panel, on the call, but also to say that our next webinar will be actually showing Workfront in action. So I'm sure there's some of the folks on the call that I'm looking at right now who are going to shrink into the background, a bit like Homer Simpson in that meme. Yeah, that's our next step. But thank you, everybody, for your time and your efforts today. And thank you, everyone, for turning up. And I hope this session was very helpful. And in the meantime, you know where we are should you have any questions. But thank you.
Thanks, everyone.